Starship 14's planned tower catch tests the lighter booster's recovery hardware and moves rapid reuse one flight closer. This is SpaceX Daily, episode 68. SpaceX plans to attempt a tower catch on the Super Heavy booster during the Starship 14 flight test. The booster carries updated hardware for the lighter vehicle configuration now in testing. A successful catch would demonstrate controlled descent and tower alignment on the revised design. The ship upper stage will perform its own re-entry and landing profiles separately from the booster recovery. Observers will watch pad systems at Starbase for any changes ahead of the attempt. Remember, Starship testing continued yesterday, and this flight directly tests whether the lighter stack improves turnaround speed. Work has begun on Starbase Pad 1 to prepare the site for operations in 2027. The renovation targets structural and ground support upgrades needed for higher flight rates. Crews are addressing wear from prior static fire and launch campaigns at the pad. The effort runs alongside ongoing activity at the primary launch mount and tower. Completion would add a second active pad for Starship testing and missions. A coordinated launch day from Vandenberg and Cape Canaveral placed 53 new Starlink satellites into orbit. The California site is now at the midpoint of its annual launch cap. Both missions used Falcon 9 vehicles with recovered boosters. The combined cadence demonstrates current operational tempo across coasts. The active Starlink satellite count reached 10,971, following a pair of recent launches. The additions came from both Florida and California sites on the same day. On-orbit performance data will determine how quickly the new satellites enter service. The total reflects ongoing replenishment and expansion of the network. Starlink service has gone live for users in Vietnam following regulatory approval. The rollout adds another market to the constellation's global coverage map. Initial capacity draws from recent satellite additions via dual-coast launches. Service activation includes both residential and enterprise terminals. Musk stated the long-term target for the Starlink constellation during an internal meeting. The figure reflects plans to expand orbital capacity well beyond current levels. Growth would rely on continued Starship deployment cadence once operational. The comment ties directly to ongoing satellite production and launch infrastructure work. SpaceX is preparing the USS F-366 national security payload for launch. The mission uses a Falcon vehicle and supports U.S. Space Force requirements. Details remain limited ahead of the scheduled date. The flight adds to the growing list of Starshield-related or government payloads on the manifest. An alternative to OpenClaw, the Grok bot agent developed with Cursor, was described as capable of handling real workplace tasks autonomously across desktop and mobile. Early users highlighted its always-on availability. Observers noted Grok 4.6 briefly appearing inside the Cursor editor before removal hours later. Reports indicate the model claimed competitive performance with leading systems during its short window. Worth keeping an eye on, scientists have raised concerns over plans by SpaceX, Amazon, and others to construct millions of data centers, citing energy demand and land use pressures. The criticism focuses on cumulative environmental effects from rapid build-out. Resolution would require clearer permitting standards and power source commitments from operators. On the AI front, SpaceX AI and Cursor released GrokBot, an autonomous AI teammate available across desktop and mobile platforms for task handling. The agent is positioned as a 24/7 collaborator for development and operational workflows. Grok 4.6 surfaced briefly in the Cursor editor and was removed within hours, with early impressions noting performance claims competitive with top models. The short appearance limited broader testing before withdrawal. Elon Musk's SpaceX AI introduced Grok 4.6 with claims of reaching GPT 5.6 Sol and Claude Fable 5 level intelligence at roughly 80% lower cost than comparable offerings. The release targets both internal SpaceX workloads and external developer access via Cursor. From an engineering standpoint, the planned tower catch on Starship 14 centers on the Super Heavy booster's updated guidance and leg geometry for the lighter stack. The booster must null its horizontal velocity to within a few meters per second while descending under grid fin and engine control, then align its capture pins with the tower arms that swing outward at the precise moment. Any residual angular rate or position error at contact multiplies the structural load on both the booster skirt and the tower mechanism, so the control loop trades propellant margin for tighter terminal accuracy. The lighter booster designing reduces dry mass, which improves the mass ratio for the same propellant load, but also changes the moment of inertia and aero coefficients the flight computer must compensate for during the boost back and landing burns. Engineers therefore retuned the engine throttling schedule and fin deflection limits to keep the vehicle inside the capture corridor, even if one engine underperforms. This iteration directly tests whether the mass savings justify the added control complexity. Success here would collapse the turnaround time between flights by eliminating the need for a separate landing pad or drone ship recovery, moving the program closer to the rapid reuse cadence required for high launch rates. The next observable milestone after a catch is whether the same booster can be refurbished and reflown inside the target window, confirming that the capture hardware itself survives repeated use without hidden damage. A quick note on the markets shows SPCX closing at $146.15. Before we go, the Starship 14 catch attempt and pad renovations keep the hardware story moving forward. And that's a wrap on today's SpaceX developments. SPCX is trading at $146.15, down 0.4%. Share this with a fellow spaceflight fan if you found it useful, and subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's episode. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. See you next time. Quick tip from the network. Try Fascinating Frontiers next. The most fascinating news from space and science. Every Narrow Network show is free at narrownetwork.com. The age of AI puts real builders on the phone with an AI host. Apply at narrownetwork.com. Age of AI apply. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.